My name's David from Tabletop Assault, and I want to give you my quick thoughts on what was Armour of Contempt. So it's probably best that we start by actually discussing the rule itself. What was Armour of Contempt? What were its core mechanics? Now, for those that have been playing Armour of Contempt since I believe it was first introduced in quarter 2 of the balance sheet in 2022, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but it ran all the way through until basically the end of the year, until quarter 1 2023 balance sheet has now just been launched, and it's essentially no longer part of the rules. You can't see it there, so it's been taken out, hence why we know it's gone. But we need to break down what actually was Armour of Contempt, and then I'm going to have a look at its pros and cons. That's the purpose of the video, break down the pros and cons, and then I want to give my personal opinion on it. I know this is a video that maybe not necessarily had to be done, but I was quite passionate about this rule, and you'll see what side I sort of flipped onto in just a moment. So what was Armour of Contempt? Armour of Contempt is, this goes, each time an attack is allocated to an Astra Militarum vehicle, Adeptus Astartes, Sancta Astartes, Heretic Astartes, or Adeptus Sororitas model, worsen the armor penetration of the characteristics by 1. Quick point there, that first paragraph didn't include all of those universal sort of unit keywords in the original iteration of Armour of Contempt. I'm just showing you what was the finalized version of Armour of Contempt, because I believe Astra Militarum vehicle wasn't in there, and I believe Adeptus Sororitas was in there, but I'm definitely sure Astra Militarum vehicle was not part of Armour of Contempt originally, and then it was later introduced. Now, the rule does not apply to the following: models equipped with a Storm Shield, Relic Shield, or a Combat Shield, or a Relic that replaces one of those shields. Makes sense. Models with either the Sacrosanct Shield or Force Shielding ability, Celestian Sacrosanct, and Nemesis Dreadnought units, and models that are under the effects of any other rule that worsens or reduces armor penetration characteristic of an attack. Very simple rule, but it had a lot of potential. So, yeah, that's the finalized version of it. Again, there was a few minor tweaks as quarter 2, I believe it was, through to quarter 4 sort of developed last year. It may have even been quarter 1, but I'm sure it was quarter 2 that it first got introduced. Could be wrong. So, what are the positives and what are some of the basic negatives before I go on to my personal opinion? So, Armour of Contempt stretches, as some people have called it, the AP system. Now, really what it does is it makes your arm penetration go a little bit further for you and your army, and it was originally probably designed, I can only imagine, with the thought process being to give a boost to some armies that were listed there, Heretic Astartes, Adeptus Astartes, to give a boost to some of those armies that are maybe lagging behind some of maybe Xenos and some other armies that have been introduced that had some really strong AP buffs over the course of 9th edition releases over 2022. Cover was a big bonus of it as well, which I'll come on to in a minute, but cover essentially got a proxy buff into it too. Well, I guess what it also did was it did also put a sort of handcuffs and restraining order on some armies that came with natural AP1s and AP2s without having to do much of maybe stratagems or rule buffing to achieve those AP values. Straight off the bat, Necrons. There you go. They come with a natural AP1 usually across all their sort of units. That was essentially handcuffed. I'm thinking of the new and improved Tau with their pulse rifles. That now came with a little bit of a handcuff on it. So there was a lot of positives based on defending against armies with the natural AP, and also made EP a lot more relevant for the armies that were able to take advantage of it. Some negatives though, and this was the kind of common one, it felt like a sort of bandage put on a wound for some of these lesser armies that were struggling with AP. Here's a quick fix for you. Put it on the table and look how powerful you've become now, because you're ignoring all this AP, your saves are stretching a lot further. Fair enough, but we've seen that sort of approach from GW in the past. It also made AP -1 weapons matchup dependent, is what some people are saying. I agree with that. In particular, again, we go back to Necrons, Tau, who they were against. If they're not against Armour of Contempt army, their weaponry is going to stretch a hell of a lot further. They're going to get full advantage of their rules and buffs. against those Marine armies, those Adeptus, Astartes, those Astra vehicle squadron armies, you're going to struggle purely because you've had a massive tool in your tool chest and your arsenal removed before the game's even begun, before you even rolled the dice. You are hamstrung a little bit. And then a couple of other negatives as well was probably how you can combine this -1 AP advantage with spamming certain units and certain abilities. So that is the good and the bad, the basics. I'm not going to go into it in a lot more finer detail than that, purely because you guys who've been playing Armour of Contempt will have already had many a channel review Armour of Contempt or discuss Armour of Contempt and broken it down to absolute minutiae. I don't intend to do that. I want to come on to the real nitty gritty of this video, which is maybe a personal gripe, but I wanted to discuss why I'm happy Armour of Contempt is gone. So that's the side of the coin I am jumping onto, is I am happy it's gone. And that's strange for me to say that, because I had a lot of armies last year that were taking advantage of Armour of Contempt. But I felt for my opponents that had to deal with Armour of Contempt. I also felt frustrated when I was up against Armour of Contempt with, for example, my Necrons and Tau last year. It felt really frustrating. But I'm happy it's gone. And here's a couple of the reasons why I am happy that it's sort of pushed to the one side. Again, this is a relatively short video, but I had to put my personal opinions out here, and I wanted to, once we knew where this rule laid, would it be introduced or removed. First one was, for me, as I just kind of mentioned, negating army-wide traits. It made a lot of armies' core fundamentals pointless. And I can't forgive Games Workshop for doing that. You worked so hard to improve Necrons by giving them more AP. Massive improvement to Tau, which I thought was brilliant with all the natural -1 AP coming across the board, because I personally asked last year that when Tau get reintroduced, maybe last year or the year before, I didn't want to see stronger weaponry. I wanted to see a varied unit of... Give me some combat, give me some Gundam mobile suit combat units. Give me some power blades on my Tau. And I didn't get that, but I was relatively happy that, yeah, you know what, I've got some core units with some standard AP that can really do something now on the battlefield against those better armies that have a better, maybe, core units that can do more things like charge and combat me in the face. I can maybe get them with a bit of range now, having the spam of Tau Warriors. So I was kind of happy I got some buff. Not the buff I was looking for, but I got it. And I was really annoyed that a lot of those army-wide traits were essentially made pointless. Very disappointed the moment I heard Armour of Contempt was introduced and I seen the writing on the wall for armies like Tau. Also, another army I want to point in there as well, which I felt really annoyed about, was, and so I've mentioned Tau, I've mentioned Necrons, but I actually felt it made Thousand Suns really, really low tier. I understand I may be wrong in my opinion on that and my assessment on that, but here's my justification for it. So Tau run off of, essentially, they've got a limited codex as it is. They don't have many vehicles, what they kind of do, but not really Thousand Suns themed. They have to run a lot of demons in their army or Zangors to kind of make the synergy work sometimes. And if you go, which we like to do, is traditional Thousand Suns, lots of Rubiks, lots of Scarabs, you maximize your Inferno Bolts. You maximize that -AP. And again, you're going to be coming up against a Marine Wall, an Armoured Division, if Astra Militarum, and you essentially straight away had, maybe not full handcuffs, because Inferno Bolters are quite powerful, but you had, essentially, there you go, there's another -1 to all your guns, and it just felt Thousand Suns already needed help to make the Codex work, already needed help to make them work on the tabletop, and they got a really good update for relic-wise and some rule-wise, maybe not unit-wise, but this came out and it just felt like a slap in the face to Thousand Suns players. Now, those who know me in the channel, I'm a Magnus the Red fanboy, so yes, I am salty, I fully admit that, but I felt that faction kind of came out the worst for Armour of Contempt. Some other cons as well, it basically made a lot of armies unplayable against Astartes factions. I'm not going to mention a few of them because we've kind of just talked about it there, but that's another thing I was a bit unhappy with. You had to be very careful now with your matchups, because there could be a natural imbalance before dice were rolled, because armies have to now factor in and deal with Armour of Contempt. You might not be able to do any sort of damage, especially if that guy's, well, spamming Terminators. That's become a problem. It could become an absolute problem. It made the idea as well, which this is an interesting one I've not seen many people or many channels talk about or call out, But I felt if you look across the codex, there's quite a number of stratagems which are designed to improve AP or make AP sort of, if you've got 0 AP for example, give a lot of really strong non-AP weapons that do mass firepower, but give them at least 1 AP. That was essentially removed. You had a lot of stratagems which essentially became pointless depending on that matchup. And that really disappointed me. Because I won't lie, I love the idea of lots and lots of dice. I'm a massive fan of here's 120 dice, here's as many dice I can. But the drawback is you tend to find there's 0 AP attached. So you have a stratagem to usually give you that AP, which GW is very kind to put into most codexes that run off that mechanic. That was essentially made pointless as well with your matchup against these armies. Obviously, if you're against a non-Armour of Contempt army, it doesn't matter. That point doesn't stand. But this video is focusing on Armour of Contempt. And then also as well, it made sort of those stratagems which were meant to stack on minusing AP as well sort of pointless, because I believe for the final part of the paragraph, models that are under the effects of another rule worsens or reduces AP penetration characteristics of an attack. So it also made stratagems that were designed to stack AP essentially useless as well, which was a shame. So you've got the stratagems designed to improve AP, which are essentially being nullified, and then the stratagem designed to stack AP, which couldn't benefit from it if Armour of Contempt saw it in play. So fair enough, I get that, you don't want to make Armour of Contempt too powerful, but that's a minor point, removing those stratagems essentially away as well. On the whole, I would just say Armour of Contempt was a bone of contention for a lot of players, and it was actually very visible in some of our battle reports. In particular, we had a battle report where I believe it was a Marine versus Marine battle report, actually, Ultramarines versus Imperial Fists, but the Imperial Fists formed a castle, and it was unmovable because they had so many buffs to their cover. It was a lot of basically sitting in cover. You had scouts with cloaks and stuff, and this is my final point. It didn't make cover as in better for reducing AP. What it did was your cover units are already getting +1 to the armor saves, sometimes +2 depending on cloaks or whatever role they may have. But if you're in cover, you're by proxy actually getting a +2 save, which you're essentially giving a standard Primaris Marine or Trueborn Marine a 1-up save if they're in cover, because they're going to get +1 for cover. This is light cover we're talking about, guys, so not dense cover. Bring them to a 2-up save, and then the -1 isn't actually improving their save, but by proxy, they're basically getting a 1-up save. These are all things that just felt really unbalanced and not fully thought through the impact on the tabletop. Coming back to one of the quick negatives we mentioned earlier, which was this is a patch just slapped on an army. See how it goes, run with it. And I think ultimately in the end, after a year's worth of playtesting and feedback and minor modifications to Armour of Contempt and the balance sheets, this is ultimately why it was removed. And I do feel for players that are really disappointed it's removed. I'm a Marine player myself, so I have a lot of armies that are no longer going to benefit from this. But I think ultimately it was the right decision for Games Workshop to remove Armour of Contempt. I feel it was too much of an unbalance, a very unfair approach to trying to balance some armies that do need help. I will not take that away from the discussion. Some of those armies that got it do need help, but I believe there's better ways to approach that help, and much more thought process needs to go into it. Now, this video isn't for me to sit here and provide suggestions to how to change or fix these armies. That's saved for another video that I believe myself and Ross are going to approach when we review the 9th edition codexes as a whole and what armies need help with improving. We will tackle that topic in a separate video. But this was just a quick video for me to moan, to tell you my concerns. I generally am happy Armour of Contempt is gone. I really want to know in the comment section below, and please be as kind as you can in the comments to each other, guys. But I really want to know in the comment section below what your opinions are as players. Are you glad Armour of Contempt is gone? Are you disappointed Armour of Contempt is gone? What would you maybe have done differently if you wanted to keep it? Or what would you suggest, like we mentioned in another video we're going to be doing, how to improve some of these armies that got Armour of Contempt without having to get Armour of Contempt? Yeah, a wee moan. I apologise, guys. Thank you for sticking around to listen to me moan and kind of give you my honest opinion and thoughts about why I'm happy it's gone. Comment, share, like, and subscribe. Check us out in some of our upcoming videos for 2023. We've got some exciting stuff on the horizon. But thanks for sticking with me and watching this. Very interested to know your opinions. Pop them down below in the comments section and I will be replying to them. Have a great day. Take care.